So now we have the actual star of the show. That's the whole reason why I organized this. I'm gonna let Neil take. Basically, you're gonna talk about your experience with some of your latest projects.
Yeah, I've got 5 case studies. Very quick.
Perfect.
And lots of ideas. The last time I presented here at UWA was 1992.
I was born.
1990. So, now, the reason I mention that, it's in my DNA to do things beyond reason, because during my PhD, I ended up presenting at 22 universities between 92 and 95. Okay, so how many of you PhD students have gone out and presented at one university? I did 22 because my biggest weakness was presenting. Okay, so think about what is your weakness today, and then you go hell of high water to address that weakness, because now is the time in your PhD to do it, not 10 years later or 15 years later, because you have a lot more time than what you think when you're a PhD student. All right, so just a little bit history mentioned there. I love how Stein talked about being ambitious and collaborative. And when I hear the word ambitious, I think taking risk. I think taking massive action, because that's what I did for my PhD. I went to Singapore and visited companies and surveyed managers. Then I went to South Korea and visited companies and surveyed managers in Korean. And that was my PhD. I just took massive action. So you've got to think about why are you doing your PhD? What's your passion? And so some person's passion is another person's incentive. So your incentive, I've got to get my PhD, I've got to get a job because I need to support, I need to have a home, family, all that. That's part of your passion. That's your incentive, great. Others, you're passionate about changing the world, you're passionate about becoming a teacher, right? So when I say the word passion, it could be any of those things, all right? Whatever floats your boat, whatever wakes you up, but make sure that it is the thing that wakes you up. I want to take you through 5 case studies, but before I do, I want to throw out some common conceptions of what a PhD is about and is not really talked about. And we can talk about that. You can get the slides off Stein later. But here's the baseball analogy I want you to go home with first. Many of us think about, and you're probably thinking about it come today, how can I get data? What's the shortcut? How can I get from A to B? Data is B, I'm in A. I'm in home base, and data is in first base. No, your data is in third base. What people miss is this second base, this first base here is your proof of work. All right, proof of work that is going beyond the call of duty in collecting data so you can impress people in industry that you can start to develop the relationship, which is in base 2. Then, if you continue that effort, then you might get some data, okay? That's the reality of what I've seen over the last 15 years of me working with industry. Because if you watched me as a teacher back in 2000, forget about the 90s, all right? 2004, I feel younger, all right? You wouldn't want to be in my class. And I'm serious, you don't believe me.
I do.
Well, Neil, I actually remember I was in your class back in the 90s.
Yeah, I don't comment on that one, please. All right, so this is me back in 2004, and video's working, but I tell you, it's not worth watching, not worth being a student in that class. They'll fall asleep, and if any of them were awake, they'd been very nice, right? And I reflected on how I looked back then, because I video a lot of my own stuff, so I can reflect and improve. But I reflect on that and think, I don't want to be like that person in 10 years' time. And so what happened in less than a
that we'd like
decade.
to
That was me
make
back
clear
in
to
2004.
In the program is that we try to bring visiting professors into the program.
Oh, that is hopeless. This is what I wanted to be 10 years later, right? And this will come through, so when it comes through, fine. But this was after doing that massive action, right? You talk about ambition to take massive action. That is going beyond what your supervisor might ask you to do, right? Massive action. In 2010, I went out and supervised the interview of over 1,000 suppliers. And people were saying, Neil, you're crazy, you only need to do 150 for a paper. I said, no, I'm not doing it for academia. I'm doing it so I can connect with industry and get in with industry. And so then Global Sources approached me and they said, Neil, can you come and talk to the buyers because we see you at every trade expo. I said, sure. And so then I needed something to go onto the stage with. I couldn't go on the stage with a textbook. And that's a vision that you might have for yourself in 10 years' time. Do you want to go into the classroom with a textbook or with real life experiences? Because business schools increasingly are asking for more authentic teaching, real teaching, and not just from the textbook. All right, this will come through, but you can see like stuff on my YouTube anyway, so you can watch it for yourself. But there's a transformation to get to here. Massive action, 1,000 interview of suppliers, going to over 30 trade shows. Okay, so that's the proof of work. That is base one. Remember, passion, base, home base. Base one, your proof of work. Go out, interview 1,000 suppliers. Then you develop a relationship. Phase two, remember? All right, global sources. So I'm on the stage now. Now I meet buyers. Now I meet other people, third-party inspectors. I meet Renald Arjaran, who runs one of the largest 3PL providers out of Hong Kong. And I went to him 4 years ago, can I have access to your data? He said, sure. And that's working on the audit data with Stein on that, because of that. And then I started working on the data myself with someone else. And then Renald said, what's the data look like? Can we produce a podcast so I can market my company? Sure. So he interviewed me. And then I talked about all the data on a podcast so we can market his company. I'm doing it for him. And so he gets the benefit of the data. Have I published anything from that yet? No! Right? Did I have a target for publishing within 3 years of getting the data? No! All right? It was all focused on that relationship and really trying to understand the data. The publication will come in time. But the problem is many schools, especially PhDs, be aware when you go into the job market, suddenly you get under KPI pressure to publish something by a certain date. Okay? So what you need to do that, but don't lose sight of where you might be able to get to in 5 or 10 years' time. So you might have to do things in parallel to do what I have done. By the way, I've been at 10 different institutions, okay? All right? I'm not the type of person that wants to get into one institution, get my tenure, and then stay there for the rest of my life, all right? If you want to do that, then you're wasting your time here today, all right? In front of me. I'm not going to, I don't know what to say to you to encourage you how to enjoy that type of life, all right? Take risk, all right? Business schools are always in need of people who go beyond the call of duty, who like interacting with data, who like interacting with industry, and as always, they are proactive and they are happy and they're a joy to be around because they bring energy into the classroom. Okay? If you can do that, you will never be out of a job in a business school. Right? So always keep that in mind. If you feel you're under KPI pressure, I might lose my job. No, you won't lose your job. Okay? You'll be fine. All right? All right. Actually, that should be a talk for the US market because they're so adjoined to this notion of getting tenure. And they did ask me to talk to a doctoral consortium in Florida many years back, And I don't think they liked the message I gave to the students. I said to them, oh yeah, I got tenure once, City University of Hong Kong, but I gave it up. I got it after 9 years at City University of Hong Kong. In the 10th year, I gave it up because I wanted to grow, okay? Because I knew I didn't want to be the same person 10 years later, okay? So the question to you, I'll remind you again, do you want to be the same person 10 years later, or what type of person do you want to be? Okay, so think about that. The big takeaway, first big takeaway from what I'm talking about, this video is not working, but it doesn't matter. There's 700, 800.
April, this wasn't there,
Yeah,
but
there you
this
go.
is why I'm interested. That's why I show you, what do? I go into factories, and I want to find out, how are these making bucket loads of money? It's a car audio manufacturer. I cannot believe they have over 10,000.
All right, so you see the difference, right? Then I go to the classroom and I smash an iPhone in front of all the students. Just watch when it comes through. All right, they just don't know it's a copy iPhone I bought from the local market north of Hong Kong. All right? So you've got to be able to, all right. So what type of teacher? What do you want to do with your PhD? All right, do you just want to become another lonesome academic that no one thinks of or remembers?
Should I play it, Neil?
Huh? You'll come. Doesn't
Now I
matter.
understand where.
What is this? All right, so, remember, you know about this, right? You know, you right? Right? Don't worry about that. Okay. Right? It's,
No, it's him.
remember? All right, it's one of those.
I know the
Okay, so
lawyers
what
as
is
well.
this?
Oh.
All right, it's a cover for a hard disk drive. The thing, one of them, right? Not a power bank.
They still can't believe I smashed something in front of them, right? But this is the road. Look, I'm trying to motivate you here today, thinking about your future, right? Well, I haven't started yet. all right?
Already phones, all
All
right.
right. The other thing I talk about, and I gave this talk to staff at Monash, it's all about being on the knife edge. That is, sometimes you could do something wrong, but you try to take risks, but don't hold back, right? But that requires a commitment. But in order to get into this circle where you're focused and you have that authenticity in front of the classroom, you need to go through this step here, all right? And you can get the PowerPoint slides later. But, which area do I be a thought leader in? Or how do you become a thought leader? Or by taking massive action. That is the big thing here, all right? It's about taking massive action, all right? Lot, going beyond, okay? All right, command authority. Because back in 2010, when I went to the trade shows and I was nervously handing out business cards, this is in Shenzhen, China, because I was living in Hong Kong for 22 years, nervously handing out business cards thinking, oh, I will follow up with the exchange of business cards in the coming weeks. I'll ring them up, oh, can you fill this survey out? Then I realised in the trade show, at various points of the day, the people were just sitting around doing nothing, playing with a smartphone. And I'm thinking, I could be doing interviews in the trade show. Wow. And the very next week, when the next trade show came along, I had 2 or 3 helpers. We introduced them to interview. And suddenly, what would go to each booth, because here's the strategy. Oh, I know you're busy today, but we're going to come back tomorrow afternoon. Do you mind if we have a short interview with you? No one says no to that, right? Because you're not bothering them at that time. When you come back on day 2, this is the second time they've seen you. Ah, you're not a stranger, right? And then that's the foot in the door, all right? And that's how I did 1,000 interviews over 30 trade shows. Hong Kong, Shenzhen, Shanghai, all right? 2010, 2012, okay? By the way, it costs a lot of money, but that sometimes, another thing to take away, you should be prepared once you start earning salary, all right, to spend at least 10% of your income on your own research.
Not when you're a PhD student.
Not
I'm going to make it very
after
clear.
PhD. I know Jack may not want me to say some of these things, but I'll just tell you, all right? There's got to be some of your own skin in the game for you to be exceptional, for you to be different, for you to take that massive action. Okay? Because the research funds wouldn't have come in, and there wouldn't have been enough to cover how much it costs me to do those 1,000 interviews. Like, we're talking about $50,000 US, all right? But the payback from that has been amazing in the last 10 years. Okay, so I've published about 5 papers from that study. That's on the academic side. And more importantly, I get to speak to industry and I get to be on the stage, which is what I love to do. And then I go into teaching, well, that just runs like clockwork. All right, so you need to think about your own why. McKinsey comes out every other month or every other week if you're following the social media, and they're saying, here are the next 5 trends in this industry. Here are the next 5 trends. Why is it that McKinsey is doing this? Why can't you do it? You are a PhD, you're a human. McKinsey have humans, they're no different. Why do we consider McKinsey as the brand for thought leadership? Why can't you be the thought leader? Yes, you can if you take that massive action. Yes, you can if you spend you're washing dishes, listen to a podcast on the blockchain. You're going for a run, you listen to podcasts on blockchain. Okay? All right? You're on the boat and you listen. You get what I mean. You start doing this in your no free time, okay? Then you will become a thought leader. You just got to choose what you want to be a thought leader in. Okay? All right? Make a choice. Because I was doing that in 2017, 18, and 19 every week, listening to the Blockchain Insider, listening to everything about fintech. Why? Because I had this crazy idea for my university in Malaysia that, we need to have a course on fintech because we need to change what undergraduates are getting on their transcript. But Neil, you're not going to publish that. No, that's part of my service, all right? All right? You're a teacher and a researcher and you're engaging industry, all 3, okay? You can't shut off your teaching and say, I'll do my own research. All right? So if you're passionate about a unit, then find out all about it. Don't just rely on the textbook, go beyond your textbook. And you will become an exceptional teacher in that way too. All right? You can be a thought leader just by, like McKinsey, but it depends on which area you want to choose. All right? Now, here's the other thing too. Many of you may think, I can get public data, but the problem is, and I think it was mentioned earlier, yes, so can tens of thousands of other PhDs around the world can get public data too. So what's your special advantage? Only if you take a massive action, you may have an advantage. Otherwise, this is a tough road to hoe. Private data, wow, you can get access to data. And when you do get access to that data, you can take your time to figure the data out. And you're not under the cosh, you're not under the pressure to publish as fast as possible, get it into SSRN so you can be the first working paper in SSRN to beat someone else. All right, and if you don't beat them, then you relegate to a B-grade journal, and then what's the point in that? All right, so there is a method of madness of going beyond and trying to get private data. All right, 5 case studies, quick, moving on. All right, how do you engage industry with impactful research? I want to show you, that's the China Supply 1000 project. That's what I did. I've spoken to over 50 industry conferences now. I spend more time speaking to industry than I do to academic. Here's the problem, PhD students. Seniors don't want you to know this, but this is the truth in publication. Are you listening? Right? The problem in academic conferences is that audiences are never truthful. All right? Great paper, well done, great paper, great paper. Then you send it off to a journal, what happens? It's rejected. Why can't you get the criticism in the conference so you can fix it and reduce the risk of rejection? What happens when you go to an industry conference? People will criticize you if you're not on point, or they'll just walk out. All right? In some ways, academic conferences should be more like that too. They were like that in the old days, but now we're too nice to each other, right? That's the contrast. Right? Industry professionals, they may look like sharks. They're going to bite at you, but they're just telling you the truth. So it's okay, all right? Because they want to save time. And academic conferences should be about saving your writing time by giving you hard feedback to swallow. But we don't do that enough. All right. 1,000 interviews, seriously. All right. That's all right. So can we publish that? Yes. Oh, here's the other big thing that you can do. Here's the other misnomer. Apologies, Jack, for this. Another one. All right. The big C word is the pie in the sky for the PhD student. That is the construct. I've got to measure the construct, and it's got to be validated, and we want reliability in measuring it. I want to know that I'll be able to measure it. Maybe if I measure two constructs, I can get a relationship between the two, and then maybe I can test a theory. Hands up if you understand what I'm talking about. You know what construct is? Yeah, all right. But here's how that is not the language of industry. The language of industry, and this will help you a lot. And it will help you, even if you go to industry, you go to talk to someone from industry tomorrow, there's only 2 questions you only have to ask. Simple, and you don't need a PhD to ask these questions. And it's all about, it's a C word again, it's not construct, it's about challenge. You ask the first question, what's your number one challenge? That's a simple question, right? Second question, how are you responding to it? That's all. That is my advice for you novices who are worried about what do I talk to if I go and talk to someone from industry, or what do I say when I meet someone at a networking event. Just ask those 2 questions. Simple. I asked those 2 questions of 1,000 suppliers. There's the number one challenge. We asked how they're responding to it, and then lo and behold, we get that published in Industrial Marketing Management. Okay, A-Star Journal, 2018. Another misnomer. Once you start going towards industry, it may be that you're going to lose your road, your discipline, right? I'm an accountant PhD. But if I go to industry, they don't want to hear about accounting, then don't talk to them about accounting. Talk to them about marketing, wherever their challenge is. Is their challenge operational? Is their challenge marketing? Is their challenge governance? It doesn't matter. You meet them where they are. Okay? Even if your discipline is accounting or finance or another discipline, if you're passionate about that, then you meet industry where they are, and they will respond to you again. All right? So what is number one challenge? How you're responding? And be prepared to step out of your discipline. Okay? Don't think that, it has to be accounting. I have to publish in accounting. No. Does this look like accounting journal to you? No. All right? So just keep that in mind. Don't be afraid to go out of discipline. All right? So I was asked by KPMG to interview these people back in 2015, 2016. This is a second case study, and the whole idea was about the China 2025. The China had this plan of Industry 4.0, replicating what Germany did, and so we want to know how companies are responding to that. So I went and interviewed all of these people, and then I put it into this diagram here. Then I put it into this diagram here, and I started thinking, all right, here are all the interviews I did, and then here are all their challenges that they faced. And I'm thinking, yeah, it would have been good if KPMG published it as a report, but they decided, no, sorry Neil, we're not going to publish it. I was devastated. I did all this work and it's not up to scratch. So what do? Do you go home? Do you go home and say, I'm not going to talk to them again? You go home, call your lawyer and sue them? What are you going to do? Right? That happened to me. Wow. Or you take it as a learning experience, and that's what happened here. I took this as a learning experience thinking, what if I could interview 50 or 100 of these? I'm going to have some interesting data. All right. And what if I just focused on startups, entrepreneurs? All right. And so now, Global Sources approached me not long after. Neil, we're going to pay you money we want you to interview 50 of the startups at their startup launchpad. And so over 4 days, I interviewed 50 of them, video recorded everything. We had transcripts. And from this first, I learned, oh, maybe I'll put it into this framework here. I had that in mind. And so now we've got 50 startups, and then we've got the challenges around IP protection, product development, manufacturing process, and so forth. Can we turn that into a paper? Yes, we can. We can start to pull out the biggest challenges and then start to frame it as a grounded theory. Wow. Okay, but when I talk to industry, I don't talk to them about this part. I show them this. And at a conference, they go, wow, what does that mean? All right? Because this is something, the visual does communicate when you're talking to an industry conference, right? This doesn't talk so much. This is more theorizing. And then I realized that of these 50 startups, we brought it down to 16, that half of them had IoT technology, half of them did not, and half of them were high price, half of them low price. And they were getting, their biggest challenge was customers were giving lots of money through Indiegogo and Kickstarter. Then they realized, oh, we've raised this $1 million. Oh, now we need to make the product. Oh, which factory do we go to? And they had this problem of, how do we make this thing? Because now we've got orders for 10,000 of these things. Yes, we can make 100, but now we need to make 10,000. How do we protect IP? Wow, all right? And all these challenges came up. So we ended up putting initial interviews here, and then we supplement those interviews by going to the internet, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, which actually talks about the whole story of these startups. So now we've got secondary data to add to our primary interview data to actually strengthen what we're writing about in the paper. And then we work with the Goyer analysis, grounded theory, a way of working on first order concepts, second order themes, and aggregated domains. And so this paper is under review at the moment. All right, and then discussion of findings and theorization of data, and we do lots of things. But this ended up with this failed attempt of working with KPMG, but it gave me ideas about how I can analyze on a broader scale data by asking two main questions. What is your biggest challenge? How are you responding? But when Global Sources wanted more questions answered that I asked during that time, but because I was the designated interviewer of Global Sources, then I was able to get all that information. All right, and so that's under review at the moment. Hardware startup supply chains, navigating through hell with the guidance of entrepreneurial ecosystems.
Neil, can I just ask a question? Just interested with all of these interviews, and then obviously all of the entering of the data, the analysis, and you mentioned we. So you have a few people in your team, who's doing what? Okay,
with the 50 interviews of the startups, I did all the interviews, but my team, the video camera person, and someone else, and I just paid them to video.
So they're not authors, they're assistants.
But now I did reach out, same thing, a collaborator through, I joined Global Supply Chain Council, and then I found some pracademics, that is academics that are really in tune with industry, and there's this guy from France, and then I reached out to him, look, I got this data, can we work together? And then he helped guide me on the grounded theory analysis. So, you know, collaborating is very important. You cannot do it all alone. So very good point, Jack. And then the other thing, in communicating with industry, you need to graph it again. Now, I mentioned that KPMG failure. Why? Because the end game is not there yet, and I'm about to share it with you now. But in one of the talks with Global Supply Chain Council, there was this consultant from BCI Global. BCI Global is it's a global consulting company, and the founder was talking to Global Supply Chain Council, and he was talking about why multinationals are moving capacity out of China. And so he would give an idea, and he said, Rombo vacuum cleaner went from China to Malaysia, and then this Crocs, they moved from China to Mexico. And then they only had about 3 or 4 examples, and I'm thinking, great, you know, that's what journalists do. They just have 2 or 3 examples and that's their article, right? And I said, doesn't anyone have a full picture of everything that's moved out of China from data that's available? And so then I set forth to actually be that person. And so I actually paid some of my Master of International Business students, this is after they graduated, look, I want you to collect all the data, quotations from sea managers about movements out of China around the world. Okay. Did I think I was going to publish something? I think, yeah, at some point in time, but I didn't know when. Was this meaningful? Yes, because everyone was talking about moves out of China, so it was relevant. Okay, that's what guided me. The academic literature did not guide me on this. Okay, so yes.
Can I add 2 things to that? Because a lot of what you're talking about is about suppliers, supply chain examples, right?
Yeah.
And that's sort of your background academically. So it's not that the academic literature necessarily guides you, but your expertise, your experience helps with that.
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit. It's the starting point.
I was immersed in that environment, you know, being in Hong
Yeah.
Kong and going across the border,
Yeah.
and you know, interviewing suppliers, but then visiting 40 factories and videoing them end to end and talking to owners and all of that. Like, this is over a decade.
Yeah.
You know,
Can I add one more thing?
Yeah.
Because I think one of the things in your anecdote is really like that's the researcher's mindset. When you said, look, the journalists have like 3-4 examples, but the researcher's mindset is that actually true? Let's collect all the data. And
Yeah,
that is the mindset that I want. That's to go one step further. That's where you create value. You might not know who you are creating value for yet, but you're gonna create value if you can say, look, those 3 anecdotes, is that actually, and I know you create value. So.
Yeah, so the 3 or 4 examples, then I ended up collecting, there you go, there's, within 6 months we collected data of 102 companies that have moved capacity out of China, right? Now it's up to 132 in what we got several months later. But again, same idea of just putting it out on, here are the reasons for the move: geopolitical risk, China cost changing, incentives from the receiving country, all right? And then, so when we want, and like there's all the companies, and each of you are now, you're looking at, see, is there any company I see? Oh, there's Apple. Oh, what did they do? Oh, they didn't move out of China, they just moved a small part out. Oh, there's Nike. Oh, did they move it? No. They just dropped from 30% down to 19% capacity from China. They moved it to Vietnam. So easy to do, they could do it in weeks. Why? Because they already have 160 subcontracting manufacturers in Vietnam. All right. There's a different reason for each company that's driving what's going on. But once we started piecing this together, immerse yourself in the data, you can start to see patterns. This is not publishable as academic, but I don't care about that at the moment because I want to get back in touch with KPMG or get this into a big report. All right. And then what about location of companies? Like out of 132, there was only 8 that closed up in China altogether. And most of them went to Mexico. The ones who went to Vietnam, it was a China +1 strategy. Mexico was a China replacement strategy. And so now I've been asked to talk to industry about what's going on with these factory moves because there was no journalists out there saying, what's going on here? What's the totality? All right. So I knew I had to get this into a major Big 4 accounting firm report. So I reached out to PBEC, Pacific Basin Economic Council, and they got me into a conference where I presented to their conference at the beginning of 2022, January. And happened, KPMG are in that, they're a major member of PBEC. And then we agreed for them to publish the report. And then that's the report there. Okay? All right, so 5 years earlier, all right, KPMG said, no, fail. But got it. How do you get from failure to here? All right, massive action, hard work, persistence, don't give up. Stay to your true self. All right, and so see this here, this is presentation to industry. This is not for academic. Again, more graphs. Industry love this thing. And what about a Sankey diagram? Any of you in data analysis, where you have the move from one side to the other, and you can see the electronics being moved to India, Vietnam, and Thailand. But let's break it up. But between 2018 and 19, there are different patterns between 2020 and 2023. I'm currently working with a professor in international business to turn this into an academic paper. Okay, so I'll let them work on that. All right, so let's keep more graphs, and this is just to show that most of the moves were multi-country moves, not a single country move. Why? Because China is big. You cannot replace your footprint in China by going to one other country. So I'm not here to impress upon you about these moves or China and things like that. Just want to impress upon you of stay in the course, okay? Massive action, go out of your discipline if you have to. There's no accounting in here. Did you see accounting? I don't see accounting. Okay, we've got to go where the industry wind blows sometimes. Okay, all right, and that's what the industry wind was blowing over from 2018 to 2022. All right, red moves, blue moves. You like the blue ocean strategy. It's different for different countries. The industry love that sort of thing. Then I showed them Vietnam. Oh, north is different from south. All right, electronics up here, textiles down there. All right, before this turns into an international business lecture, and I haven't got an international business yet. Well, I did Singapore and South Korea. Okay, maybe I did. All right. Okay, and then there's Mexico, and as you can see, the red shifts and the blue shifts. And so you can tell lots of stories. Industry love this sort of stuff because it's not about testing theory. It's just showing the data as it is. All right, and then, incentives from receiving country, issues in the USA, geopolitical risk, and issues from China, and etc. driving these moves. All right, reasons for source and shift across country. All right, and then I think this is a first. I've got a logit table in an industry report, a logit analysis. This is in here. Okay, you can download this, by the way, from the KPMG website. All right, charting a new course in Asia Pacific. Okay, I had to squeeze that one in. I love it. All right, so that's the report. You can find that for yourself. All right, so thinking about data, theory, and story. Finally, we can go from, let's finish up because after 4. All right, I've spoken enough. Stein, you talked about the inspections, but before that, we got access to supplier blacklist data because the person I was speaking next to in Global Sources happened to be Mike Bellamy, and he ran PassageMaker, which was a black box manufacturing assembly in Shenzhen. And I said to Mike, what else are you setting up? He said, I got this supplier blacklist website. And I said, can I get that access to the data? And he said, sure. And so we've got 3,000 complaints of suppliers. And then we write a paper, and just a test of whether they have different screening mechanisms, audit mechanisms, resolution are affecting whether there's fraud happening and things like that, all right? But going back finally with the last one was the factory audits, okay? So I'm working with Renaud Arduran of Southeast Asia, and we got access data to 6,500 inspections and audits, but of them we were able to match about 360 factory audits with product inspections. So we want to know if we get a better factory audit outcome, does the product inspection outcome is better? And we actually find that, and that's a paper we're currently working on. And so interesting stuff that comes out. How did I meet Renaud Arduran, the founder of Southeast Asia? I spoke next to him at the Global Sources Conference again. Okay? So once you get connected with industry, it just leads to other connections. But you've got to keep that massive action, all right? And so I want to finish off with the following, all right? Lots of data. Industry loved this because I did this in a podcast with Renaud. He asked me all questions and I showed him this, and he loved it. He loved it because he can show his clients, hey, invest 500 US in a factory audit because it's a better true visual of where that supplier can deliver on in terms of a product inspection outcome in 6 months or 12 months time. Wow, That's industry impact, isn't it? That's what I thought. Yeah, all right. And so there's more data there on the differences between a high factory audit and a low factory audit. You can see the inspection results are much better compared to a low factory audit. So passion, all right? Baseball analogy, all right? The data isn't here, okay? The data is over here. Proof of work, all right? Proof of work gets you the door open relationships, coffee time, whatever, with industry. Then the data might come after that. All right? And you outsource some of your stuff, all right? Because here, this is unique to you, this is unique to you. Here, you can outsource, you can pay RAs, that's what I did. What do I mean by outsourcing? You can go to Fiverr. I've got 136 tasks completed on Fiverr over the last 8 years, right? Where I've paid people that I didn't even know to do things for me, okay? All right? Finally, all right? You're thinking about theory, construct, and the relationships. Industry are thinking about what is their challenge, how are they responding to the challenge. Seriously, that's the nomenclature of industry over here, all right? Scope 3 measurement challenges. So PBEC, they came to me after this. They said, Neil, we want to work with you again. Sure. And they said to me, Neil, what topic would you like to work on? I said, let's work on the hardest one in sustainability compliance, and that is Scope 3 measurement. And that's what we're working on at the moment. All right. And operational challenges, product compliance challenges, reporting compliance challenges. Okay, that's the difference. Most PhD students, you're taught to focus on the theory, the construct. I understand that, that's PhD training, right? But in the end, this is your industry nomenclature, okay? There's always tons of issues to look at, all right? How do you get time? Listen to talks, podcasts, and downtime while you're exercising, while you're doing housework, while you're doing the washing, okay? I'm not saying you replace your current classes with all my gobbledygook. I'm saying that you need to make more time for yourself, all right, to find out what you're passionate in, okay? And then researching data, collaborate with experts. My collaborating helped me too. Stone, you talked about that. Let me just stop there. I've gone over time. Thank you for being here today. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm gonna, you guys set up. I'm gonna give you like 5 minutes to carry your thoughts. I'm gonna do a conclusion, and then if there's any questions, for Neil, then go for it. I think, right, there's a lot's been coming at you today, and I want to sort of, the goal of today is not that you copy anything that I did, anything that Neil did, because probably Neil's going to be better at it anyway. But the goal was obviously to give you ideas, right? And I think one of the sort of, I was trying to like summarize or what I think is really important when you can see from the 3 talks is like that not staying in your lane part is quite important. Like you have to be curious enough to say, okay, this is maybe 1 lane over or 2 lanes over. It's something that I'm interested in. It's sort of related to what I am, but I'm going to see where it's going to end up. And that's the good researcher's mindset. And this is the starting point. That's probably the previous slide. But this is the starting point how you're going to sort of get to those industry relationships. It's being curious what their industry problems, being curious what your colleagues are interested in, and maybe they were going to help you to have these industry relationships. But just being curious and not being stuck to the one research question, which is the true way forward. That being said, and I need to warn you for that, the reason why I said this is for PhD is, especially if you're planning on staying in academia. I am fully aware that the way the PhD is structured in Australia, that you don't have a lot of time to build up relationships, that you don't have a lot of time to think about wild ideas that you may do 5 years in. And that's not my purpose. The purpose is here is to plant that idea, and that maybe you think about the things that you're working on now is who should you talk to about it? Or what does that help you to talk about with industry? Like that's why I emphasize the supply thing. Mm-hmm. Like there's and that's that passion that you talked about. You have some natural starting points that you can start talking about with industry. you have some. Like Fiona, you're working with certain data about IT and hospitals. And then basically you have to say, that's what I'm interested in, and then the thing is what Neil said. What are you working on? If you talk to someone in the industry, what is your job? Most people actually start getting very passionate to talk about their job, and just be curious and listen, and then go from there. Be open on that. Okay, this is my summary. I hope I gave you some time. I know you have a lot of energy, probably needed the downtime. But are there any questions for Neil? Any other projects? For the people online as well, do you have any questions for Neil?
I just wanted to make a comment just about the value of the data that you've got, Neil, because I can see that, like a lot of the PhDs probably think about their actual projects that they're working on, their studies, and they're thinking about what's next. And they're probably not thinking so much about what they're going to do with that data in 10 years' time. But I look at your data here, and I think it's something you could keep coming back to. Like, it just doesn't have one end result. As you said, there's a report, there's, you know, another paper, then there's a journal article, and then there's, you know, who knows what. And then there's many ways, as you showed us with the graphs, that you can chop it up, carve it up, you know, whatever. So I just think there's just so many benefits in getting this sort of data.
Yes.
And then the more you get into it, the more opportunities, obviously, is what you saw, you know, from that first report that you did for KPMG, and then how it just expanded out, added to it, and amazing to have that. Yeah.
Starting with industry first, rather than the literature. I think sometimes just finding out what is that challenge out there, all right, and going to the literature second. But often as PhD students, we're taught go to the literature first and then go out. And sometimes it does you a disservice because you lose sight of what's going on outside. Yeah. And like, I've learned a lot by paying for myself membership of, say, the Global Supply Chain Council, and so the networking. And so there's many different industry associations you can join. Thank you. It doesn't have to be supply chain, or whatever you're interested in. There's an industry association.
And even like we have industry events in the business school, right? Just come, have a chat with people. Like even if you're not the presenter, there's often an opportunity for a reception. There's people around, they're wearing name tags. Oh, you're working at Ernst & Young, or you're working in audit and tax, and they might say something totally different, but just get them talking. Be curious, I think. What are their problems? That's what you want to do. And it's like, it doesn't have to be, like it can start small. It snowballs. Just be open for it. That would be. Any other questions?
I have a question. So clearly, as PhD students, we have a limited amount of time. You have to finish what you kind of do within whatever 3, 4, 5 years. Well, not even 5 years, 3 or 4 years in Australia. Some of your data sets are absolutely amazing, but you clearly took a while to get to where you were. It was probably a steep curve at the start before it finally paid dividends at the end, right? So what is your advice for PhD students like us who probably can't see light at the end of the tunnel yet?
Yeah, my advice is very simple. My PhD was in '96, and I didn't start thinking this way until 2004, so it was 8 years after finishing the PhD and publishing 4 AOS papers. And then I decided, no, I've got to do something better. So even when I was just on the academic track, like it was 7 days a week anyway. So I was passionately just knowing the literature anyway. I just decided that, no, I don't want to do this for the next decade or 2 decades. So I just changed my energies and moved it to the industry. Okay. So,
Can I give what you're probably more looking for answer? The other thing you can do, it's not like you can go all the way, right? You can go Neil's path and maybe focus on that. But there are intermediate ways in the sense of you can, like what you're doing now, and you have more context than most of us would have, but you can sort of start drip feeding that and thinking if you want to have a longer academic career, you could start building that up during your PhD. You could start making those contacts start. The other thing that you can do is, it's not necessarily with companies, if you don't have those contacts already, it's just not going to happen. But you can go more the route of Frank, where you look at specific data, and you can use some of the strategies, right? You have some specific data, you try to outsource some of the data collection and cleaning with your PhD budget. And you can present, if you have data that nobody else have and you have systematized this, you can visualize it and present it to. It can be, you try to get, we have a podcast now in the business school, you can say, look, I have this cool thing here, I want to talk about it. Give presentations here when we go for industry. So you can start building up that track. You start building up that track record that might in the long run. So it doesn't have to lead to a publication. If it can be a part of your PhD, that helps you go down. So there are pathways there. You can collaborate with someone who has insight.
Or reach out to CPA Australia.
Yeah.
Because that's what I started
Be more
doing
CFA.
in 2002. I reached out to them, can I present workshops? I was doing that before I went to industry. So, you know, that in some ways could be a stepping stone. But that's 8 years after I finished PhD. All right, so it's not fair of me to say, you need to do this now, but it is fair of me to say, you need to think about what you want to do with your PhD. I think that's the big message. But do you want to just stay on the academic route, or do you want to be
apply it in this industry?
more connected in 10 years' time, right? Long term, all right? Okay? Yeah.
Any other questions? If anyone wants to go, I know this has been a long while, you're free to go, I'm not going to hold you hostage.
One thing I told the US students, said, oh, I've actually been fired from universities because I stayed on my passionate path. You know, I didn't get my contract renewed at Hong Kong U. I didn't get my contract renewed at Practice U, because they said, oh, you haven't published enough. But when I didn't get renewed at Hong Kong U, guess what happened? I got a visiting teaching position at National University of Singapore, one of the best universities in Asia. You know, doors close, doors open. Right? So don't just think you want to be in one institution for the rest of your life. It's okay. It's okay.
And on that positive note,
Thank you.
Very important, very inspiring presentation.
Thank you. Thank you.
thanks.
And now I understand why there is this interest in entrepreneurship. Because I likened your first model to creating MVP, then validating it, and then creating a prototype. Once you have that, then you get your data.
Yes. Makes sense.
Yeah,
Thank you.
exactly the same steps.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Magnificent.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you for the presentation.
Yeah. Thank you, Rachel. Good to see you again. Lovely. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil.
Oh, welcome. Most welcome. Thank you. Welcome. See you. Oh, welcome.
Passion is very important.
Huh? Which part?
Passion is very important for research.
Yeah, it's hard to come by sometimes, isn't it?
Good
Yeah.
consults have an interesting.
Mm,
What was the big thing that you got?
Yeah, I know. From get more thinking about your presentation. Yeah, passion is movement, and I have to
And they have different offices.
consider
It's
figure out
interesting.
why I chose a PhD degree, not just for a job. Yeah, have to think about this
Keep thinking.
more carefully.
Don't stop thinking.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. But time is limited. I have to try away.
Don't give up.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Welcome, most welcome.
If I had heard you 10 years ago,
About 40 years.
all right, for me, because I haven't been an academic all my life. I come from industry,
Yes.
right?
Thank you, Joanne.
So if I had heard this 10 years ago, I might have just done that, right? Because I got into academia again, I guess a little bit by default, but because I fell in love with here, then I went on to do a doctorate, right? But I was just doing it. I have a chance to do it. I've never imagined I could do it, so I did it. And then fell into the pattern of teaching what I knew best,
Yes.
entrepreneurship, innovation. And because basically I'm an accountant, I'm an ACCA.
Yes.
But I can see the sense in, like, strong sense of commitment in what you're doing, that we should have PhDs, not purely with an academic focus as they start, right? But, you know, if you really want to put it to good use and help industry,
Yes. Yes.
like specialize, take that specialization. So I can see I can see it. I could have done that if I knew, but I didn't.
The business school model is under challenge, I think.
Yes, but I've been saying, like, as I said, I come from industry. I see problems very differently
Yes.
than we do in academia.
Yeah.
And I always have this kind of debate sometimes, you know, like, you know,
Yes.
they ask me, how do you engage with industry? You know, like, because I look at industry, I don't look at academia. I look at industry, and then I service industry with what I know, what I don't know, I research, right? That's how I do it.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's any future without industry. It can't be a future.
Well, for business schools,
That's right.
it's different from the STEM.
It's no longer publishing this, and this.
Yes.